Welcome back. Today we're going to be embarking on a nostalgia binge, both because I have way too much fun playing crusty old 2012 era versions of vanilla Minecraft, and because I would like to finish out Nothing sometime this century, and some ding-dong keeps making me build 2-scale replicas of the Burj Khalifa every time I want to progress. Unfortunately for me, vanilla Minecraft is a game designed for children, and its skill ceiling is currently renting out my basement, so we need something to spice it up a bit. Enter Vechs, spelled V-E-C-H-S, though the transliteration is probably just as accurate. Vechs is a map maker, and is somewhat unusual in the sense that he openly states that he hates everyone who plays his maps and wants them to die, and that he has designed the maps accordingly.
Very good!
Welcome to Waking Up, generally regarded as Vechs's hardest map according to some random wiki entry I found online, because that is famously an excellent source for reliable information. This map starts us off in a bedroom, so we are already off to an excellent beginning because as a veteran Minecraft player, I too find doing anything in bedrooms to be exceedingly difficult. Unlike the rest of my challenge runs, this map comes with rules. And they don't say anything about engaging in involuntary extreme home makeover sessions, so I take this as carte blanche to steal everything that isn't nailed to the floor. My impromptu remodeling session nets me exactly nothing useful, other than further confirmation that Vechs is really out to get the average Minecrafter because I stumbled across something even worse than a bedroom. Lore. Truly, Vechs is an evil and twisted man, who seems to be operating under the dubiously accurate assumption that I am literate, but I guess we can't be perfect. So anyway, there is jack all in the room that I can steal, so I head through the start of the map with nothing but 3 signs, a block of sand, 6 books of painting, 9 glowstone dust, a ladder, a lever, 2 note blocks, and someone's creative lit homework assignment that I stole for absolutely no tangible benefit whatsoever. Full disclosure, I haven't actually played very many of Vechs's maps before, and I certainly have never completed any of them. What I have done, however, is started enough of his earlier maps to tell you that by far the most important thing to do in the early game is manage your resources very carefully. Vechs likes to control your progression by limiting the variety and quantity of things at your disposal, and being given a whole 8 logs for free at the start of the game is honestly a bit concerning. Nothing to do for it though, so I set about with my usual starting resource collection, and then immediately realized that you get tools to start with as well. With resource management skills like that, it's a miracle I'm not working in middle management. Anyway, not wanting to repeat that mistake again, I loot the starting island to the ground, netting myself a sharpness 3 piece of paper, a knockback 2 fire aspect 1 sign, a smite 4 knockback 2 looting 2 golden sword, and 26 pairs of leather pants. Something tells me those will not be terribly relevant. With nothing left to steal and sporting a spanking new pair of leather chaps, I apply the yoinkity-splankety to any conveniently located glowstone, grab my wood, and head on my merry way in search of more things to steal. And while we're doing that, info dump time. I'm playing the map on the recommended Minecraft version of 1.4.7, which has some different mechanics than y'all will be used to. Well, actually, no, if my analytics are right, most of y'all would have been around when this version was out, so I retract that statement, but just in case, let's have a refresher. First off, shields, obviously, don't exist, as does the offhand slot. Those are a 1.9 thing, and I honestly can't say I will miss them. Hunger drain is very minimal in this version, as long as I'm not sprinting or jumping, and health regenerates at a slower but steady rate, without any hunger penalty as long as I have 9 or more shanks of food filled, which means sustained combat is going to be tricky without an additional source of regeneration. On the other hand, skeletons have stormtrooper aim and can almost entirely be spoofed by sprinting perpendicular to their line of fire, case in point, and mobs' AIs in general are quite a fair bit stupider. The biggest change here is that there is no push to sprint button, which is going to play merry hell with my muscle memory, but shouldn't have any tangible impact on the run besides that. The first room of the dungeon, I guess, for lack of a better word, is a giant hole with a lava lake in the center and a precarious gravel bridge layered over it. This is a trap, obviously, and the smart thing to do would be to just ignore it. Unfortunately for me, that isn't an option. The goal of the map is to complete something called a victory monument, which in this map requires you to collect one of every color of wool block without crafting them, an iron, gold, and diamond block, and apparently some secret unmentioned block that requires silk touch. These blocks, or in the cases of the ore blocks, the materials to make them, are scattered and hidden across the map, requiring you to exhaustively spring every single one of these stupid traps you see in order to find and collect the things you need to win the game. Of course, there's no way to tell ahead of time which trap guards game-progressing items or valuable loot, and which traps are just bait. Case in point, an Enderman stole a block of gravel from the wall earlier, exposing a gap leading to some sort of shaft. In normal maps, this might be a neat secret area with some hidden treasure or something. Not so in Vechs maps. Rather than containing valuable goodies or a new route to explore, I instead found 16 creeper spawners. And that's it. No loot, no secrets, just 16 creeper spawners hidden behind a wall designed to collapse if you touched it. Wrapping around to the left of the lake past the creeper feature sees me arriving at a different hollow in the rock with a fully intact oak tree inside. This early on in the run, a renewable supply of food, tools, torches, and building materials would be a massive swing in my favor, and would mean that dying is far less devastating than it normally is in these sorts of maps. That said, this is the single most obvious trap I have ever seen in my life. In all the maps I've played, Vechs never intentionally gives out saplings or dirt this early on in the run, and I am all but certain that this is going to be made impossible to harvest the instant I get close, so I don't even try. Instead, I start farming Endermen and scheming. So here's my thinking. I don't know how Vechs trapped this tree, but I'm certain he did something to it. Whatever it isn't something like a pressure plate or a tripwire trap because those are too obvious, for one, and the mobs would have triggered them already. Bud switches are obvious and take up space, and unless only the bottom log of the tree is trapped, I would have spotted them, and the map was made in 1.3 something, which rules out any kind of remote state change detector mechanisms that I can think of. The only other plausible trigger mechanism, then, is something proximity-based, which is not great, because I can't really defuse those. Any prox detection system worth its salt would see me coming a mile away, but what I can do, maybe, is bum rush it. The end goal of the trap can't just be to kill the person triggering it, because you could just zerg it until you got lucky. It has to destroy the tree somehow. No command blocks means no dynamic map deletion effects are in play, so one way or another the tree is going to get blown up, set on fire, or have a dragon dropped on it. All of those take time, though, and if I were to, say, ender pearl on top of the tree and start hacking away at the leaves with a sword, there is a very real chance I could break quite a bit of foliage before I had to pearl out of the trap. Nothing for it but to try, I guess.
Surprise! Uh-oh!
Bye, have a great time!
Nope.
Well, that didn't work. That's fine though, because there's 2 other trees I can try this with.
Yoink!
So long, Bowser!
And out we go, sapling in tow, which you'll notice doesn't actually help me all that much until I can get some dirt to plant it on. This map was made before carrots and potatoes were a thing, and it's going to be a lot easier for Vechs to not give the player wheat seeds than it is to not build anything out of dirt and dirt byproducts, so I'm fairly optimistic about finding this stuff at some point, but there just so happens to be a third tree cavern that I haven't explored yet. Yeah, wait a second, that tree didn't blow up. That tree was supposed to blow up. Yeah, so as it turns out, the joke's on me, because only the first 2 trees were booby-trapped. You're totally supposed to get saplings the normal way. And I just spent 20 minutes metagaming myself. Joy. With all of the immediately obvious traps out of the way, I'm pretty certain the third tree chamber is where I'm supposed to progress through, but just to be certain, I spent some time gathering all of the junk scattered around the main cavern and looting chests for supplies. This netted me a chain chestplate enchanted with projectile protection 4, which was nice, I guess, and also the iron block that was chilling in the center of the lava lake. I'm still not sure if I should have gotten the iron block this early, in all honesty, but the trap was so incredibly milquetoast by Vechs's standards that I'm leaning towards yes. Iron can be farmed from zombies, so it doesn't really make all that much sense to make getting the iron block very difficult. Other fun treasures include a Power 3 Punch 1 bow and a Power 2 bow from skeleton drops, both of which are fantastic, and random assortments of stone tools and food, and something labeled as Bruce in a box, which was actually just a splash fire resistance potion and a blaze spawn egg, both of which annoyingly fall under the category of useful enough to be worth taking, but not useful enough to actually use, and will probably sit in my loot stockpile until the end of the game. Clearing out the last tree cave is illuminating, and the pun is absolutely intended. Other than some zombie spawners and a bunch of naturally spawned creepers, there isn't much in the way of defenses to the place, which makes sense given that you're expected to be clearing the thing with a stone sword. The interesting takeaway is the presence of dirt blocks and a well-secured chest of saplings, so not only did I entirely misread the wood situation, I'm probably going to be expected to make my own torches from now on. Ugh. As something of a consolation prize, clearing the last of the cave did give me my first color of wool block, though. 1 down, 15 to go. Seeing as there is quite clearly only one way forward, I opted to move all my gear up to a newly discovered location labeled as Intersection 1, which raises some interesting questions about how you're meant to proceed. I'm not sure how quickly difficulty is going to ramp up, but the requirement of a diamond block implies the presence of diamonds, which means that there is definitely some sort of difficulty scaling proportional to how far along the map you are. If that's the case, a depth-first traversal would give a steeper difficulty curve initially and faster progression overall, but my assumption is that breadth-first is probably the intended option. Of course, that implies I know where I'm going, and I don't, so what I actually do is just pick a random tunnel and send it at full speed, which for a Vechs map is about a slow crawl because I need to watch out for traps. My chosen route leads me to something called the Cave of Shrooms, and was selected largely because the name implies the existence of an easy farmable food source and dirt, which are two things I'm notably lacking in. It also implies creepers, as I became personally acquainted with in short order. So, I think I figured out this area's gimmick. It's creepers. They're in the walls. All of the walls. And also the ceiling. And the floor. And my intestines. Don't ask what happened to my gear. It had an, accident. As did 17 of my previous incarnations. I have discovered why I cannot have nice things, and it is this hallway. The one thing I have going for me is that somebody really went ham with a coal down here, and between my exceedingly large supply of torches and exceedingly larger supply of free disposable human resources, I can solve the creepers raining from the sky problem by doing the next best thing to setting the walls on fire. Mostly. For my efforts, I'm rewarded with the ability to progress into the actual dungeon, and a single mushroom, which represents a free infinite supply of questionably sourced mushroom soup, and therefore made this whole adventure worth it. I then spent far too many minutes of my finite lifespan shoving the mushroom down into my hobo hole, only to realize that a random zombie had dropped a potato a while back, rendering this whole exercise pointless. Bone meal is never going to be in short supply with a map like this, and even if it was, this is pre-nerf bone meal, so I think it's safe to say my food problems are solved for the foreseeable future. Go Gadget sustainable farming initiatives. For all my farmers out there, if you haven't gotten your skeletons out of the closet and onto the dining table, you're doing it wrong. Progressing into the dungeon proper is made marginally more complicated by silverfish infestations in the everything. Unfortunately for Vechs, silverfish don't reinforce themselves if you kill them fast enough, and I, as a self-respecting American, am the proud owner of a novel insecticide known as Hollow Point that doesn't so much kill them as it revokes their license to exist in the physical plane. So, as long as I have my bow, I will be just fine. Of course, that doesn't do anything for the creepers. My solution to the main cavern is much the same as my initial approach to most things, which is burn it with fire, in this case localized in the stacks of many, many torches that I have used to ignite this place hotter than the surface of a noonday sun. With my eyeballs firmly seared out of my skull and most of the major sources of mob spawning then murked into submission, I can actually go around looting the place. Obvious wins are mycelium and a little bit of dirt from the main chamber. This will let me grow the far more efficient 2x2 trees from the jungle saplings I looted earlier, and between it and my nigh inexhaustible supply of calcium cadavers, wood should no longer be a problem. By this point I have both carrots and potatoes at my disposal, so mushroom stew has been largely rendered obsolete, but I also have both kinds of mushrooms in excessive quantity as well as a number of mushrooms, if I ever get tired of reenacting the Martian. The best part of the loot, though, was soul sand and netherwort for potential potion brewing adventures. If I can get lucky with my looting too and find some ingredients, there is a very real chance that Bruce is going to become a brewing stand here in a bit. Further exploration finds a hallway with some sort of potion trap that, from the sounds of it, is being operated by spiders in minecarts. Charming. I stole the potions, grabbed a block of the orange wool from the nearby wool shrine thing, and behind the shrine discovered that once again all my work moving the mushrooms around was rendered pointless by the existence of a so-called mobile food delivery system. Whatever. Free eggs and a pickaxe at least. I do go ahead and try to deprive Bruce of his rods while I'm back at my base camp, but he seems to have a tighter grip on them than expected, and didn't feel like sharing. Which is honestly fine, because without any water for bottles or ingredients for brewing, potions are still kind of not a thing we can do yet. And then, having fully restocked on only the finest of cheap junk stone tools and half-burnt potatoes, I resume my journey down the second lane of the intersection towards Boomer Castle. It's pretty okay, I guess. I did have to disarm a couple more of those spider-powered potion traps, and am currently sitting on 9 stacks of instant harming 2 potions, so creepers and spiders aren't going to be a problem to take out for the foreseeable future, but exploration is slow going because of how high the passive mob spawning rates are. Turns out, not having any map to speak of is a really effective strategy for concentrating mob spawns. I also needn't have worried about blaze rods, because there's a blaze spawner directly underneath the bridge to get there, and I used a fun little quirk of how looting works to get myself some rods without wasting the sword's durability before blocking it down as much as I could. Blaze spawners are far less sensitive to lighting than other kinds, unfortunately for me, but it's as good as it's gonna get. For those who are wondering, looting works by checking if the player who is responsible for killing a mob is holding an item enchanted with it when the mob dies. It doesn't actually care about how the player killed the mob, though, so things like splash potions and arrows will act like they had looting on them if you switch to an item with the enchantment before they kill the mob. It's a super niche use and is harder to pull off without an offhand slot to hold the bow or whatever, but it still works before 1.9 if you're willing to quick swap your items. Further exploration down a side cave next to the blazes nets me nothing but more useless lore and some pre-made potions, which was nice but not really worth the time. I then spent like 20 minutes doing nothing but trolling silverfish and taking apart the potion trap I defused earlier. I have no idea why I did this, and the only thing of value I got out of it was a handful of redstone, but the silverfish AI is really stupid in this version, so it was kind of fun to walk them into the lava, I guess. This is just one of those things that happens when you have a squirrel for a prefrontal cortex. Once I was done trashing the map, I cached my cache and got back to work. Climbing a thin bridge suspended over lava under constant blaze fire seems like a monumentally stupid way to lose my equipment, so I instead broke through the fence to the right side of the bridge and just started racing around the place slamming torches down. The goal here wasn't to make progress or even to really clean the place up, so much as it was to get enough light down to tamp down the passive mob spawn rates enough to let me spot any spawners. All the harming potions I stole came in super handy here. Direct hits, two-shot creepers and spiders, and while those aren't terribly dangerous mobs on their own, there is enough of them that they can bog me down before I get to their more dangerous ranged support options. Kind of really makes me appreciate how nice mending gear is too, because I am chewing through equipment like candy, and the mobs just keep on coming. The first problem we run into on approach to Boomer Castle is the entirely unsurprising Vechs classic of, oh look, it's raining monsters, this time of a skeleton variety. The ramparts of OK Boomer Castle, as it seems, are rather infested with the things, and every time I get close, they jump me and try to show me pictures of their grandchildren. Except for this one. This one has forgotten what Steve is, and has been randomly shooting at a piece of fence since I got here. At the very least, Vechs rewards me for the inconvenience, with the contents of a pre-selected hoarder house. Seems like we're getting to the random stuff portion of the challenge, wherein we are gifted with assortments of whatever Vechs had in his pockets at the time to conceal one or two decent items in the chest. Key takeaways here are a melon slice, which will very soon be playing a starring role in the world's worst, most dehydrated melon farm of all time, a decent sword, and a few pieces of armor that, well, I'm sure they seemed like a nice thought at the time, but I don't really anticipate them helping all that much. Having successfully navigated the local retirement community's enthusiastic support of the Second Amendment, securing the perimeter is a breeze. Except no, it's not. I'm sorry, we forgot to celebrate Independence Day. And just like my neighbors, these folks do not know how to read a calendar. Right. Now that I don't have to worry about getting justifiably self-defensed in the rear end, I can freely enter the Cold War-era bunker disguised as a castle. Hello there! Do you have a few moments for me to tell you about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? No? That's fine. I would be happy to give you a, personal introduction. So anyway, Takeshi's Castle is, on initial impressions, shaping up to be a bog-standard hack-and-slash dungeon crawl, complete with lava pits to nowhere that I will absolutely be exploring at some point because I would totally hide loot at the bottom of those. That is, of course, until Vechs makes a progression trashing mistake. Can you spot it? That's right, it's sugar. Now, you might be wondering what the existence of sugar has to do with the price of orangutans in Uzbekistan. To that query, I can only respond with, why are you wondering about the price of orangutans in Uzbekistan? This is a Minecraft video. But anyway, sugar. Vechs, being the kind, generous soul that he is, has been gracing me all along with golden apples as a reward for finding hidden chapters of some book or something. I don't know. It's lore. I'm not literate. I didn't read it. The base kind of golden apples are pretty terrible in this version of the game and only give a few seconds of regeneration, so I've been hoarding them with the rest of my junk, alongside, by sheer coincidence, all of the things needed to craft weakness potions. Netherwort and mushrooms from the shroom forest, blaze rods from the lava pit trap, sand from random chests. The only thing I was missing was water, and with one of the branching pathways being called We All Float, it's pretty obvious where I can get some of that. And sugar, which I was just given half a stack of. I don't know what it is about villagers that utterly break challenge runs, folks, but this is like the third time this has happened. I promise you, I do know how to play the game without establishing a plutocracy powered by bread and human suffering. It's just that bread and human suffering is usually much easier. I feel like I shouldn't even need to explain how to get zombie villagers in a Vechs map, but in case it wasn't blindingly obvious, the guy's maps are about 20% mob spawner by volume, so I can just remove a few torches in a pre-selected area for a couple seconds and about 2 quintillion random zombies will spawn in for absolutely nothing. The really funny part is where I'm gonna put them. Villager requirements in older versions of Minecraft are kind of a bit whack, and one of them is that the center of the village, as determined by the very logical and intuitive mechanic of door position, has to be able to see the sky. As far as I can tell, Vechs built the entire map underground, and there's a bedrock layer on the highest point of the map that covers up almost everything just in case someone, like me, decides to get cheeky. There are approximately 30 bajillion ways to break this bedrock layer in this version of the game, so that's fine, but we don't even need to do that, because this version is so old that the spawning mechanics were a bit fussy, and getting a reliable world spawn upon returning from the end, which I started in, requires, among other things, a clear line of sight to the sky. Bingo bongo, pre-built village location, ready for repopulating. The zombie concentration of the map is so overwhelmingly massive that getting a couple zombie villagers moved over and baited takes approximately -3 seconds, give or take the 5 or so minute waiting period for each of them to transform into something that won't despawn if I wander too far away. And with those secured, it's time for me to once again enable biblical levels of inbreeding through the subtle and potent arts of amateur carpentry, and being responsible for chopping enough wood to turn Warehouser green with envy. We will, of course, ignore the part where I forgot that mega spruce trees weren't a thing yet and had to run back and get the jungle saplings. And just like that, there we go. Have fun, you two. Don't do anything that I wouldn't. After giving my prodigal children 4 to 6 hours to get it on like Donkey Kong in a Viagra factory, we come back to this wonderful hellscape of debauchery filled with the sweet, sweet sound of the free market economy at work. But wait, there's more. I had some free time while I was waiting for the villagers to breed, and lacking anything more productive to do, decided to take it upon myself to do some infrastructure upgrades. Vechs made the unfortunate mistake of giving me an entire chest full of minecart track a little while ago, and it seemed like a shame to not use it. So let me give you a tour. First, we start at the breeding pens, and then after a brief trip through the spawn tube, come to the wonderful scenic overview of a giant lava lake full of charged creepers. And then after another trip through the winding tunnels full of world editing mistakes, we arrive at my brand new Trade Emporium. Pay no attention to its appearance. We haven't had the decorators in yet. I assure you, the resemblance to a penal colony is entirely incidental. Was any of this necessary? Well, you might be surprised to hear that the answer is no. Actually, none of it was necessary. Sure was fun, though. Gotta say, nothing quite says your challenge map quite like building a delicately constructed suspension bridge over the creeper booby traps. That was a bit of an adventure. The only problems with villager trading is, the trading part. These are OG villagers, which limits the things I can sell for emeralds to an extremely limited set of items. In that set, the only things I have any of at all are wool blocks, coal, and iron ingots, and the only one I can produce in bulk is charcoal, which is interchangeable with coal in this version. It's not the end of the world by a long shot, but 24-ish logs per emerald is a pretty steep conversion rate, and the trades are almost guaranteed to not restock, so I'm probably going to need a proper villager breeder at some point. Of course, trading with the things requires me to move them somewhere other than the mosh pit that they currently occupy, and the less said about that process, the better. Minecart riding mechanics are, a little... yeah. It's a bit like collecting Pokemon, but about 300 times more annoying. Several thousand logs and enough villager wrangling to cause a truly heinous case of testicular torsion, and I can now proudly say that I have tier-skipped whatever progression path Vechs wanted me on, in so much as I have mostly full diamond gear way too early on in the map. Hindsight being 20/20, this was absolutely not worth the time it took. Iron golems have been drip-feeding me a healthy supply of iron for a goodly while now, and while quality jumps from iron to diamond are nice, they aren't mining 5 stacks of logs per item nice. This is kind of a common problem that I ran into with older versions of the game before mending was a thing, because the only time it was ever worth using diamonds was when you were rolling for high-quality enchantments or expecting to fight other players. For everything else, disposable iron gear was cheaper, easier to get, and just about as good in every capacity. Either way, I have it now, so I might as well use it, but I suspect I won't bother to replace it when it breaks until I have a very good reason to, or it becomes less labor-intensive to get. And with that exceedingly long squirrel moment out of the way, let's get back to what we were supposed to be doing, which was mopping up the remains of Casa de Creeper. For all of my initial hesitation regarding the price tag, my new armor is a substantial upgrade when it comes to tanking explosive damage, and there is a whole lot of that to go around here. Vechs has done the usual thing of lining the corners of every hallway in the castle with creeper spawners because, obviously, but he has also introduced a fun new mechanic in the form of primed TNT blocks. If you ever played the beta versions of Minecraft back when TNT ignited when you broke it, it's basically that, and he likes to scatter them around corners to give creeper ambushes a bit of unexpected oomph and knock out torch placements. I have added a water bucket to my kit, so they aren't terribly difficult to deal with on their own, but in bulk they slow me down quite a lot, and in doing so expose me to more hostile mob activity. For this, there is an unexpected godsend, though, and it's those stacked potions of harming I yoinked from all the wall traps earlier. On a direct hit, they deal 12 points of damage, and in these close-knit quarters, they absolutely brutalize creepers. It's kind of a terrible counter to silverfish, but a crit with a diamond sword will one-shot them, so that's fine. The only problem is that I'm rapidly running out, so here's hoping I can find some more wall traps here soon. Oh hey, speak of the devil. For my extensive period of time room clearing, I am eventually rewarded with something called a wildfire, a diamond sword that in my personal opinion is strictly worse than its unenchanted variant due to its uniquely awful enchantment combination of knockback 2, fire aspect 2. If I'm meleeing mobs, I want them dead, not knocked out of melee range, and I certainly don't want them to be taking ticks of fire damage at critical moments that give them iframes and prevent me from controlling their movement. I don't even bother taking this, but I might come back later and craft it with my current one when it's near breaking to strip the enchantments off. The real treasure is instead in the next room over, and let me tell you, that one was a doozy. The spawner payload was, as far as I could find, 8 cave spider spawners and 4 silverfish spawners, arranged in such a way that if you get too close, they can trigger in sequence and provide a constant trickle of mobs that intensifies as you push forward. If you use harming potions on the spiders for safe kills, the silverfish will invariably not be one-shot, forcing you to retreat and pick off the sudden surprise horde of silverfish that are pouring out of the walls. But if you melee the silverfish, you get dropped on by cave spiders and poisoned, forcing you to retreat and regenerate health. In both cases, the mobs have time to respawn and restart the whole process. Tall book stacks with thin corridors between them provide the spiders excellent vertical cover and mobility while limiting yours and block torchlight quite well, making any push you succeed in slow and ineffective at securing a foothold. Once I cleared the room, it was immediately obvious why it was so well guarded, because in clearing it, I netted myself a heaping stack of books and not 1, but 2 enchanting tables. If the 50-something levels of XP weren't somehow enough to give you a clue, let me remind you that I have a fully secured bank of 16 creeper spawners left over from the very first trap clear. And once I make a farm out of those, the only limit to how many pieces of overpowered kit I can make is how fast I can pick up the XP. This is a monumental upgrade. And it also further supports my idea that getting diamond gear was pointless because highly enchanted iron is going to be substantially cheaper and almost as good for anything short of an apocalyptic amount of mobs, which will no doubt be something I have to deal with further down the line. Unfortunately, such wonders of Minecraftian engineering will have to wait until the next episode. For now, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed.